Shalom Yasharallah, this your brother Dawada, coming back as you read this here truth again. First and foremost, I want to give all praise unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Ruach HaKodesh. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that taught us this truth and that rule well. And salutation and much love for you, I can push in this truth and sincerity in the four corners of the earth and enduring afflictions and during afflictions to feed and edify the elect. So I want to jump to this here quick lesson, which was pretty much inspired by, you know how they say, hey, be instant in season and out of season, and it's pretty much at this here, in this position, being Lord willing, being a prophet, that it's kind of hard not to really talk about the scriptures, no matter what your conversation is about, Somebody else may be talking about something else, but you always see the spiritual aspect in it, So nevertheless, having a conversation with somebody and telling them about how they kind of hide things in movies where they're constantly, somebody was just now coming into the fact that, Esau had done whitewashed history and everything, And I was like, yo, they actually be telling our stories and all these movies that we're watching all the time. This is what make these so-called blockbuster movies. The fact of the matter is that we can relate to these movies because it's our story. They just change little things here and there. For instance, the movie Avatar, right? That's the story of the so-called white man coming over here to slaughtering the Native American Indians. But instead of them being so-called brown people, they painted them blue. Instead of calling them Navajo Indians, they called them the Navi, right? So it's basically the same thing. They came over here for their resources and everything like that. But nevertheless, this is what make these blockbuster movies, And as I was going through certain movies and how they all have the same story, like, for instance, Dragon Ball Z, Superman, and, like, Moses, they all have the same story, right? So just roughly, briefly going through these things to show these different things, we all know the story of Moses, right? Moses, there was a situation that was going on. The Egyptians said that the Israelites were starting to multiply and it was going to be more mightier than them. And because they had them in bondage, they was like, well, shit, if we go to war with somebody, they might take sides with our enemies because they're in captivity under us. So let us deal, basically divisively against them so they'll stop multiplying. But they didn't realize that under our oppression, we multiply more. But nevertheless, one of the things that the Israelites wound up doing was because they had put out this decree to kill the children under a certain age. So what they did was they put Moses in a little basket, right, and sent him down the river, right? And so when you just look at these things on a surface level, all right, his people was about to get destroyed, more or less to say, right? So they put him into this little pod down in the river, sent him away to another land, amongst some other people. He was raised by other people, right? He didn't know who his identity was, right? So he thought that he was this Egyptian for a while until he realized he was an Israelite, Then he wanted to be with his people, because he was growing up as an Egyptian, second in command, and so on and so forth, or the Pharaoh's grandson, more or less to say, But nevertheless, there was a point in time where he just, woke up to who he was or whatever, whatnot, So this is the same story, like I said, is if in Dragon Ball Z, right? But and again, Moses, his name was changing everything as well too, right? Just like us today, it's the exact same story that we have, how we got over here, right? But nevertheless, you got in Dragon Ball Z this dude Goku, right? He come from a planet called Planet Vegeta, where there is a race of Saiyans, one group of people. Right now, their planet is getting destroyed, or their planet got destroyed. Then to save the people, they sent one kid off, which was little Goku. They sent him in this little pod to Earth, right? And he went to Earth, and he was basically supposed to take over the Earth, and so they could repopulate, right? But he came down here, bumped his head, and forgot who he was, discontinued from his heritage, and so on and so forth. Was raised by the humans. They gave him a human name, or Earthling name, which was Goku. When Vegeta comes, he keep calling him Kakarot because that's his original name. He keep trying to wake him up and show him who he is. Like, yo, dog, we way above these people over here. Why are you bowing to these people? You stronger than everybody on this. You can destroy the whole planet. They can't do shit to you. The same story with Superman, right? His planet is about to be destroyed. They put him in a pod or in a basket, more or less to say, send him down a river or send him through space onto another planet, right, where he was supposed to take over the planet so they could repopulate, right? But then he was raised by humans. They changed his name from Khalil to Clark Kent, right, and raised him up as a human. But then all of a sudden, he became who he was destined to be, right? So this is our same story. So, and with how do I say, speaking of these here things, all right, relating these things to people in modern day times, like this is our same story going on. People don't quite understand that these are our stories, all right? But nevertheless, I want to go into the scriptures and to pull out that this is actually what happened to us. We're actually living this same story, So when you watch these superhero movies and things like that and these cartoons, and you wonder why you have such a connection to them, people that's not into, like, let's say anime, they'll be like looking at adults like, why y'all watching Dragon Ball Z? Like, this is us. This is a story of us. This is why we cleave unto it, all right? So let's get into this. Like I just broke down Superman, Dragon Ball Z, and Moses' story, right? Now, here's the same thing is your story. It's the same exact thing that happened to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, right? So this is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. I'm going to start at the top. Well, let me just start at verse 3. It says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, and the son of perdition." Now, we're not going to deal on the man of sin being revealed, the son of perdition, because we go into that a lot, which that is just talking about Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, right? But nevertheless, it says that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first. All right, now we're going to touch on this here, falling away, which is dealing with basically you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans falling away from who you are. You wind up discontinuing from your heritage. Let me see if I can find that. Let me just grab that real quick. Yep, right here. Jeremiah 17 and verse 4 says, Jeremiah 17:4, "And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thy heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thy enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For you have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever." In fact, let me come back to this. Let me grab a different precept first in Deuteronomy 28 to set the stage. Deuteronomy 28 and verse 64, because these, from Deuteronomy 28 verse 15 on down, all right, Deuteronomy 28 is a more or less to say a contract in layman's terms that we made with the Most High. If we serve him, verse 1 through 14 goes through all the blessings he was going to bless us with. 15 on down to 68 goes through all the curses that will befall us, right? Obviously, we didn't keep the Lord's law, statutes, commandments, so these curses fell upon us, right? So this is Deuteronomy 28 verse 64. "And Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods which thou nor thy fathers have served, or either thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." So the point here says, "And Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even to the other." Now, again, people have, Christianity does something to us where we think this is like fairy tales or whatever, whatnot, and so on and so forth. And I was telling the person, like, yo, if you was watching this, really the Bible would be a good movie to watch, because it's full of, this is where you get all the movies from. This is why there's nothing new under the sun. They keep telling you the same story over and over again, all right? But nevertheless, if like the movies, like let's just say Superman or Dragon Ball Z, right? The story was the same story. He was telling Superman, hey, you're going to be scattered from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth, so on and so forth. Or in their case, both of their cases, Dragon Ball Z and Superman, they were scattered from one end of like space to the other end of space, right? From one planet to another planet, right? Again, they kind of go, more imaginative in their imagination with these types of things. But i.e. us, we was scattered from one land to the other, from one side of the earth to the other side, right? But nevertheless, it says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even to the other." Again, just like how, Goku was going through space, Superman was going through space, but not only that, like we also read in Jeremiah, we'll go back to it, you was going to discontinue from your heritage because you was going to be scattered from your origins of where you was at, So it says, verse 65, "And among these nations," see, you weren't going to be raised up amongst your people like that. Your people was going to be around, but you was going to be under the guise of the peoples whose land you would fall into. All right. And it says, "Among these nations thou shalt find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but Yahweh shall give thee a trembling of heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind." All right. Hey, just like, all these superhero movies, like, damn, the X-Men and shit like that. They got your boy Professor X uses that machine Cerebral to be able to dial in, as a one-on-one direct phone call to all the mutants all around the earth, or really all the people, but really all the mutants. He can dial in on them. But as you see, even in that movie, how it's portrayed, the mutants, and that's what they out there doing. They're looking for all the mutants to try to gather them all up. And you got the two different sides between Professor X and Magneto. But nevertheless, inside this here thing, they're able to find them. But where are these mutants at? All right, they're all scattered amongst the four corners of the earth. All right, and they have to go and find them all or whatever, whatnot, and they're gathering them up. It says, reading again, Deuteronomy 28, verse 66, "And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and thou shalt have no assurance of thy life." Hey, again, going into the X-Men movie, this is why they always have to hide under, so-called wraps, hide their powers and things like that. Because why? People always want to try to kill them, and when they find out who they are, they're like, oh, these mutants. In fact, the X-Men, all these movies are based off of us. But like when you really go into the person who created the X-Men series, that's what they tell you it was about. It was going through the suffering of so-called black people during the time of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X times and things like that, you know. But nevertheless, you know, you'd have to have a spiritual eye to see all these things and be like, damn, this is our goddamn story right here, you know, spiritual powers and everything like that, you know. But nevertheless, it says, continuing on. Oh, let me go back to verse 66. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shall fear day and night, and shall have no assurance of thy life. You know, now compare that to today, right? Let's just say an X-Men, right? You know, you got X-Men, you got the blue girl Mystique, right? And people, like, if you really pay attention to her homegirl, now she can change her ways and everything like that, right? She can actually look like how she looks without the blue shit on her skin, right? So the actress that plays her, she can transform into what the actress actually looks like. And people wonder, well, when she's blue, she's walking around naked. Well, when she takes off the blue stuff, she actually has clothes on. So why don't she just walk around in the regular skin instead of the blue suit? Well, this is a representation of so-called black people, how we have to put on that certain hat when we go into our jobs and stuff, talk a certain type of way, take the bass out of our voice. And, you know, so-called black women, they have to go inside these jobs. They can't really wear their natural hair out in certain ways. Like, you know, if they have an afro or something like that, they're like, oh, that's too black. You got to straighten your hair or whatever, whatnot, you know? So, hey, just like the girl Mystique, you know, she likes to walk around in that blue, the so-called blue ugly suit or whatever, whatnot. She made a reference in one of those movies like, what, you don't like the way I look like this? You know, and she, you know, because people would ask, why don't you just look like the damn actress without all the blue shit on if you could change how you look or just look like somebody different, you know? She's like, no, this is how I look, you know? Y'all the one come up with the constructs that us mutants are something strange or this and that, you know? Y'all always need, when you need us, you always begging for us to come to your begging, you know, so on and so forth. But, you know, any other time like that, you want to shit on us. Like whenever there's some danger, you calling us to save you or whatever, whatnot. Just like today, like right now where everything's locked down, they begging for the NBA to come back, the NFL to come back so Jake can entertain them, the music to come back so Jake can entertain them. But other than that, it's like, oh, these niggas out here rioting and shit. These are these mutants, these thugs. We got to get rid of these mutants, these thugs, so on and so forth, you know? But nevertheless, hey, so reading again, verse 66, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and thou shalt have no assurance of thy life. So the mutants didn't know how, if they, you know, they had to walk on eggshells. Do I show them my superpowers here and there? Do I transform like this? Because if they see me in my rawness or whatever, whatnot, they might try to take my damn superpowers and try to put me in some kind of concentration camp, right? Just like regular Jake. If I walk into the store, you know what I'm saying? And you know how like, hey, they talk about your house shop, voice of many waters. They know so-called black men have so-called stern and deep voices and stuff like that. So we go inside the store like, hey, how y'all doing? Good morning, y'all. How y'all doing? You might get scared as fuck like that. Oh, God. You know, you walk inside a bank and shit, everybody start looking at you. Hey, how y'all doing? They get all afraid and everything. So what you got to do? You walk in, you got to put in that little smile, make them feel comfortable, make them feel like you safe around them. You know, or they safe around you. You know, you walk, hey, how's it going, guys? Oh, yeah. You walk out with your cash all in your hand or whatever, whatnot, walking in the bank. Like, no, I ain't taking no money out the bank. I'm coming to bring y'all money. Don't get scared. You know, you have to put that or in X-Men talk, you got to turn blue or turn like the regular people like Mystique do. She can't walk around in her blue skin because people, as soon as they see her, they, oh my God, look at this mutant, you know? But hey, continuing on, it says, you know what, we're not going to go into that because that's, you know, going into the slavery stuff, which we can still go into, but nevertheless, the point is that I'm trying to make is we was going to discontinue from our heritage, but then also coming back, you know, I'll have to do that in a different lesson, but us coming back into our heritage, all right, but you have to understand this here falling away first, right? So let me go back to Jeremiah 17, and I think it was verse 4, right? It says, and thou, now we were pairing this with Deuteronomy 28 and 68, right? How we was going to be scattered from one end of the earth into the other end of the earth. Keeping in mind, just like I said, these movies and things that you're watching all day, it's the same story that you read here in the scriptures, right? Jeremiah 17 and verse 4, and thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thy heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thy enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. See, now in like this, let's say the Superman movie and the Dragon Ball Z, they didn't necessarily tell you that part, like, oh, because, you know, like Goku situation. It wasn't that he pissed off King Vegeta and King Vegeta was pissed with him and sent them off, or Superman, he pissed off the people on his planet and they sent him off. It wasn't like that, but nevertheless, they kind of change up a little things here and there, you know. But nevertheless, it says, even thou, and thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thy heritage that I gave thee. Now let's transfer back into these movies. Superman was calling himself Clark Kent. He didn't know his name was damn near Kal-El until I think the other dude came from space. The people from his planet came and started calling him that. Goku didn't know his name was Kakarot until Vegeta showed up and started calling him Kakarot. He's like, who the fuck is Kakarot? You know, just like how we keep telling you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, you're the children of Israel. You like, nah, nigga, we niggas. We Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Nah, what are you talking about? That's why we have to say you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, or we have to call you, you know, the so-called white man, the so-called black man, because if we was to say you Israelites, you Judahites, you Issacharites, you Edomites, most people don't know those names. Why? Because you discontinue from your heritage. You don't know who you are according to the Bible. And this is where people get all mixed up again when it's talking about, you know, the Illuminati, these other people and so on and so forth and everything like that. They wind up changing the names of all these different people and places so people wouldn't know who they are. Like even in the radio and songs like that, you got Jake talking about, oh yeah, I got such and such on Persian rugs and this. They bragging about having Persian rugs as if that's some nice shit to have. But if you was to tell them, you know, Persia's name was changed to Iran, they wouldn't necessarily be bragging about having some Iranian rugs, right? But they just wind up changing the names of these places, right? Let me read that again. Jeremiah 17:4. And thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thy heritage that I gave thee. Right? And I will cause thee to serve thy enemies in the land which thou knowest not, for you have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. Hey, just like we just read in Deuteronomy 28, verse 64, we was going to be scattered into the four corners of the earth. All right. And in that scattering, we was going to be raised up amongst other people. Right. And then we would take on not only the heritage of those other people, but whatever heritage they put on us. Right. Like whatever we call today is so-called black history and black people customs and things like that, like pork chops, collard greens, hog maw, and chitlins and shit. That ain't no shit that we was originally doing. That was some shit that Esau gave unto us, man. He programmed that shit into us. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not even our regular heritage and things that we wouldn't actually be doing, right? Just like in, again, in these movies, Dragon Ball Z and Superman and X-Men and things like that, they was giving them their own heritage and so on and so forth and their identities and things like that and giving them jobs so that they were like, nah, bro, we just mutants. We normally would put all you humans in subjection. But y'all so-called repurposed us and made us so-called docile until what? You always have somebody like Magneto that will have the people like, nah, rise up and be who you was meant to be. You know, bringing you back into your heritage. But Xavier, Professor X was trying to lull you back to sleep. Again, you had Goku and Vegeta. Vegeta kept calling Goku Kakarot. Like, no, nigga, wake up. You not Goku. You not no human, bro. You not an earthling, bro. You transform into a Super Saiyan. You way more powerful than all these people, man. Showing them who they are. Right? Let me continue on. Let me go back to oh, I think I already read this, but 2 Thessalonians 2:3, it says, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, right? And that was the point that I wanted to grab in this here verse. So when we go back, who's going to discontinue from our heritage? This is that falling away. We don't know who we are walking around, you know? Again, having this conversation with this person, it's like, oh, it's crazy how all these people can go back to who they were and this and that. And they was naming off some people like, well, wait, hold on, time out. The so-called Mexicans and the so-called Latinos and the Native Americans, they suffered the same thing we suffered. They don't even know who the fuck they are. You know, they went into slavery before we went into slavery twice. They went into slavery under the Assyrians before the Southern Kingdom went into slavery under the Babylonians. And then they also went into slavery under these modern-day Edomites today before the so-called Negroes, the Southern Kingdom went into captivity up under them. But hell, you ask the so-called Latinos today if they ever been in slavery, they're like, nah, we ain't never been into slavery like that. We ain't never went on no slave ships or nothing like that. But that's actually their history, all right? For like 150 years before we even came over here, they was going into slave ships. So, hey, even they don't know who the hell that they are, you know? A lot of them think that they're this and they're that or so on and so forth. You know, like these, was also having a conversation about these Bohemian people, all right, pissed off with the Spanish people. For they're like, no, we built this land. This is our land, and indigenous land. Like, well, technically, those Bohemian people, they're not indigenous to that land. All right, they was brought over there that served slavery over there. So that land is not theirs to begin with, like that in that scenario. They was brought over here given those customs. These people discontinue from their heritage. They think that that's where they native from, but they're not native from there. All right, but these people are fighting tooth and nail. No. Like Goku, nah, I'm an earthling. I'm this, I'm that. No, bro, you from a whole other planet, bro. You see what I'm saying? Continuing on. Let me go to, matter of fact, let me go to Psalms, because I'm almost done actually. Psalms 83 Psalms 83 and verse 2, it says, for lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken a crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Again, who are the hidden ones? Let's go back to the X-Men situation, right? The mutants, they're so-called hidden in plain sight. They don't always show their identities, that they got superpowers and this and that. You know, they have to be hidden out of plain sight. Just like you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, right? But in reality, Esau's the mutant. He had the mutation in DNA. We got the dominant gene. He's got the recessive gene. He's the one that has the mutation. But you know how they had to flip shit around. Verse 4 says, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation. This is where we discontinue from our heritage yet, all right? That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. Well, the word Israel is written right here in the scriptures, so how can we forget about that, right? There's still a landmass on the globe to this day called Israel, right? And so it's not that the name of Israel is going to be of no more remembrance, like you weren't going to remember that name no more, but you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans wouldn't associate yourself with being that. You wouldn't think of yourself as that's who you were, you know? Just like, let's say, for instance, to give you a modern-day term, the so-called Native Americans that was originally over here, for them to start saying that they was brought over here, some of them could have been brought over here in captivity, in slavery, but for them to say that they're not indigenous to this here land, in a certain sense, you know what I'm saying? And they was like, there's some immigrants that came over, like, no, hold up. So-called white man immigrated his ass over here and shipped your ass over to the other side of the globe. But you was originally over here before that, you know what I'm saying? And before that, you was over in Assyria. You started out in the middle in Israel. But nevertheless, you know, for them to discontinue from their heritage. This is why you have a lot of these people that's walking around looking like Edomites right now, but they're actually like the Northern Kingdom. They don't even know that they're not Edomites, but they think that they're Edomites, you know? Verse 4 again, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent, for they are confederate against thee. All right, so hey, they're all together trying to make this one with this one plan, you know? It says the tabernacles of Edom, so-called white men, the Ishmaelites, the Arabs, of Moab, these are the Chinese people. And then when it says Ammon down here, those are also the Japanese people. The Hagarenes, Gabal, the Philistines, and inhabitants of Tyre. Now, these are basically all Hamites. The Amalekites, or it says Amalek here, but the Amalekites, all right, these are a tribe of Edom, which they are actually the Jewish people that you see over the land of Israel today, right? These are the same people who wound up taking us and putting us into captivity, and they're working together to keep us from knowing who we are, right? And they're the ones that have control over the books and everything like that, and whitewashing history. This is Joel chapter 3, starting in verse 3. Start at verse 2. I will gather all nations and will bring them down to the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations. Going back to Deuteronomy 28 and 64, he's going to be scattered into the four corners of the earth. All right, that the name of Israel may be no more remembrance unto us. We was going to discontinue from our heritage. All right, this is why we're walking around not knowing who we are. So we were scattered into the four corners of the earth. And it says, for they have scattered among the nations and part of my land. Right? They have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. Transatlantic slave trade, right? This is what they was trading them for. Yea, what do you have to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coast of Palestine? Will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head, because you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their borders, right? So they was going to be scattered to the four corners of the earth, sold into slavery, and their names and their identities would be changed, and they was going to discontinue from their heritage. This is why we don't know who we are. This is the lost sheep of the children of Israel, right? Real quick, let's go from there to, we'll close out here, actually. I know where Ezekiel 35, and then I'm also reading 36. Ezekiel 35 and verse 10. It says, because thou hast said, these two nations, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom of Israel, and these two countries, all right, the land of Israel, and then also the Americas over here, because again, after, you can read this in 2nd Ezra 13, how the northern kingdom came over here after their captivity in Assyria, and they populated the whole western hemisphere from all the Americas, North, Central, and South Americas. But Esau came and brought his ass over here and dominated and put everybody in captivity. The Israelites, the northern kingdom, in captivity over here, and brought the southern kingdom over here as well too, right? It says, because thou hast said, these two nations and these two countries are mine, and we will possess it, whereas Yahweh was there, right? So this is what they wound up saying. Let me read verse 12. And thou shalt know that I am Yahweh, which have heard all thy blasphemies which thou hast spoken against the mountains of Israel, saying they are laid desolate, they are given to us to consume. So, hey, they were going to let us discontinue from our heritage. This is going back into their plan to have that falling away from us, discontinuing from our heritage, right? Ezekiel 36. Oh, man, we froze up. Lord willing, this here video is still going. Point I wanted to grab is here in the top anyway. Ezekiel 36 and verse 2. Thus saith Yahweh power, because because the enemy has said against you, aha, even the ancient high places are in our possession, right? So let me keep reading verse 3. Therefore prophesy and say, thus saith Yahweh power, because they have made you desolate and swallowed you up on every side, that you might be a possession unto the residue of the heathen, all right, scattering us into the four corners of the earth and discontinuing us from our heritage, so we didn't know who we were, right? Made you desolate and swallowed you up on every side, that you might be a possession unto the residue of the heathen, that you are taken up into the lips of talkers and the infamy of people. Therefore, ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of Yahweh power. Thus saith Yahweh power to the mountains and to the hills and to the rivers and to the valleys and the desolate wastes, to the cities that are forsaken, which become a prey and a derision to the residue of the heathen that are round about. All right, now see, my phone froze up here as far as moving on the screen, but I'm going to try to get as much of verse 5. But this is talking about, when you read into this, if you could pull it up on your own, it's, you know, even all of Idumea, right? Verse 5, therefore thus saith Yahweh power, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen and all Idumea, which appointed my land into their possession with the joy of heart, with the spiteful minds to cast it out for a prey. And the point there was that, hey, what? Starting with Idumea, going back to Psalms 83, the first ones that was mentioned was Edom. Idumea is a Greek way of saying Edom, same people, so-called white man, all right, which has scattered us into the four corners of the earth and also taken possession of our land. They're also working on in the minds of us to discontinue us from our heritage. This is why you don't know who you are. This is why there's no real so-called history upon, no so-called history of you that they so-called teach you nowadays. But nevertheless, they show you all day in these movies. It's all in the scriptures and everything else. But it's the elephant in the room. It's so close upon you, you can't really see that that's who you're talking about, all right? So Lord willing, this here lesson was edifying into the elect. Like I said, I'll come back with a part 2 dealing with, us coming back. And this is the time that we're in, all right? But Lord willing, this here lesson was edifying into the elect. Until next time, I say, call halal Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakakwadash. Double honor to the apostles and elders, the great millstone that taught us his truth and never will. And citation, much love for you. I can push his truth and sincerity in the four corners of the earth, and enduring afflictions to feed and edify the elect. Until next time, I say, stay strong. Shalom. Oh, now we want to work.